I will now turn things over to my colleague, Emmanuel Catan, who is the director of the Alliance program, and he will facilitate a panel on workplace-ready skills for an AI-driven world. Emmanuel, please.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on Workplace Ready, Skills for an AI-Driven World. And thank you so much, Amanda, for your introduction. So when we reflect on the impact of AI on higher education, it's important to focus both on how universities teach and what they teach. It's crucial, in other words, to prepare students not just to use AI tools, but also to thrive in a workplace that will be transformed by them. What are the core competencies, the mindsets, the literacies that students must develop in order to remain competitive and adaptable in an AI-driven labor market? What role do human skills, such as critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, what role do those skills play? Should universities teach with AI or teach beyond AI? In order to help us work through these questions, we've convened a transatlantic panel of experts who together can cast light for us on those issues. So I will introduce each of them to you very briefly, and then we'll go through 2 quick rounds of questions before opening up to questions to you. If you haven't done so already, please do scan the QR code there. You know the music already, and this is how you'll be able to put in questions. Please feel free to start sending your questions as our discussion unfolds. Just to let you know that we're waiting for a 5th panelist, Lipson, who will be joining us very, very shortly. So let me first start with the gentleman on my right. Daniel Guetta is a professor of professional practice at Columbia Business School. Daniel teaches classes in business analytics, has authored award-winning case studies in the area, and co-authored Python for MBAs. He has won numerous teaching prizes, and prior to joining the faculty at Columbia, Daniel was a data scientist at Palantir Technologies. On my left, Celia Zolynski is a professor of private law at Paris Panthéon Sorbonne and a member of the ethics committee at France's National Commission on Informatics and Liberty. Celia's research focuses on digital legislation, intellectual property and fundamental freedoms, and in 2024, Celia co-authored a book called A New Culture of Attention. Lipson will be joining us in a few moments. Aymeric on my far left. Aymeric Dieuleveut is professor in statistics and learning at École Polytechnique in Paris. His main research interests are statistics optimization, stochastic approximation, federated learning, uncertainty quantification, high-dimensional learning, and non-parametric statistics. If you're not impressed, I don't know what will impress you. From March to August 2016, Aymeric was a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley. David Romoff on my right is lecturer in discipline, enterprise risk management at the School of Professional Studies at Columbia. He's a risk management practitioner with 15 years of experience in modeling market and credit risk. David enjoys communicating ideas and building models and visualizations. Prior to joining Columbia, David held a number of positions in risk management at On Deck Capital, AIG, and Bear Stearns. So, Daniel, let me start with you. Several studies, and they were mentioned as well this morning, including a recent Stanford Digital Economy Lab report, suggest increased unemployment among early career workers, specifically in AI-dominated fields, while jobs for older professionals in that field have remained stable. In that context, how do we ensure that young graduates who are vying for these early career jobs that are vanishing, how do we ensure that young graduates gain the experience they need in order to access positions of high responsibility later on in their career? Can universities, for example, play a role in, I don't know, simulating real-world AI workflows in order to better prepare graduates for this evolving market?
Great question. First of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the invitation. I will answer. I just first want to begin by slightly cautioning, I think, relying on these kinds of studies that are coming out. I think they're very important. But I really, I'm getting vibes now of early COVID days when you woke up every morning and masks are good, masks are bad. It's spreading, it's not spreading. It spreads by contact, it doesn't spread by contact. And there's just this kind of complete whiplash you get. I had an epidemiologist friend who joked back then that, there were two things growing exponentially: COVID cases and bad predictions about COVID cases. Those were the two sort of things. And I think we're in the same sort of state right now, and I think for two reasons. Right, the first one is, it genuinely is a field that moves incredibly quickly, right? Take, for example, the flavor of the day is Claude Code. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, people probably weren't talking about it, now they are, so it's going to change very quickly. And especially peer-reviewed research, which is the gold standard and something we'd always want to rely on, by definition, because of the peer review process, by the time it gets published, it is definitely out of date. So that's the first thing I'll say. Also, I think, the kind of things you see in the media are less likely to be nuanced because that doesn't sell, right? I think, show of hands, out of interest, who's used something like Claude Code in the room, for example? So a few of you, you'll know if you've used it that it is an astonishing piece of technology and it deserves all the accolades it gets, but it's also not perfect, and that's a story that doesn't sell, right, of exactly what the nuance is. So I'll just put that up as a statement. Having said that, to the extent that we do agree there's going to be a lot of changes in careers, how do we prepare our students at a high level is your question. So I'll answer. I should point out that I answer this question from a position of real humility. I wish I kind of knew for sure what the answer was. I think the last 2 years have been some of the most challenging for me as someone trying to design classes and figure out what to teach, just because it again changes so quickly. And I think I found stable footing, and certainly I don't have stable footing. What I've landed on is basically a two-pronged approach, I think. I try to devote 50% of my teaching, 50% of my time, to basically ignoring everything I said at the beginning and to just focus on what's hot right now. So I will spend 50% of my class on Claude Code. A year ago it might have been 50% on prompt engineering. Whatever was sort of, the hot topic of the hot topic du jour, I would sort of, focus 50% of my efforts on that, because there is some benefit to that. It is what's exciting. People should know that. There is, however, another 50%, and I think especially here it's worth bringing this up. We have an enormous advantage being in a university. The fact that I get to teach at Columbia rather than at a boot camp or in LinkedIn Learning or whatever it might be, I have the benefit that I don't need 100% of my teaching to be useful for my students tomorrow. I can teach the fundamentals. I can teach the real sort of, guts of how AI works. I can sort of help them understand, okay, how does technology work? What is an embedding? In what places could you apply it? Can you sort of really think through what it means to actually implement that technology? And that's something that changes less. I'm not saying it doesn't change at all, but it changes less, right? The fundamental concept. And so I would say the other 50% of my time I spend really trying to help our students understand the fundamentals of that technology and how it works in a way that, won't, again, as I say, necessarily be useful tomorrow, but hopefully will equip them to adapt. So when the next wave comes along, they hopefully have that muscle that they can use to actually sort of really grab on. And maybe later, in response to questions, I'm happy to get into more details of what that means. But that's the two-pronged approach I've taken to this really big challenge. But I'm very curious to hear what my other co-panelists are going to say, because I'm very much learning as I'm driving the car, as I'm building it.
Great. Well, let's see what happens in the legal field. So turning to Celia, you're a law professor, and I'm wondering, to Daniel's points, whether you're concerned that many jobs, and again, we're talking about first entry jobs in the legal field, are threatened by AI. Does this change the way that you envisage your own teaching, the way you teach your students? Are there specific competencies, that you're focusing on, sort of more fundamental competencies, to Daniel's point, that would ensure that they're equipped to contribute in a world that is actually dominated by AI, but competencies that are inaccessible to AI somehow?
Yeah. for sure. This is a major concern we have, and we have been thinking about this until more or less 10 years, especially since the democratization of Gen AI, which will have and still have a significant impact in the legal field. So for the last few years, I already use teaching methods to take into account these challenges with my Master 2 degree students. It is a Master 2 degree dedicated to IP and IT law. So firstly, we have added to the curriculum 20 hours of basic training program on technical understanding on AI. Secondly, we have increased the number of collective research projects conducted by students, and we offer also multiple interactions with various stakeholders. And last but not least, I try to reinforce the student involvement, creativity, and even human bonding, especially since the democratization of Gen AI. So as an example, I would like to share with you the method I'm using for the last 3 years. So first, for my class on IP and on AI, and copyright, so a very sensitive topic, I developed, let's say, a do-it-yourself method to increase the student knowledge and creativity. So the first step is based on reverse learning to increase their legal knowledge. The class is divided into small groups of students, and each is dedicated to a topic. For example, what is the legal status of deepfakes, and what happens regarding IP law. And I'm working with each group to prepare a detailed document dedicated to the specific legal topic on the model of, let's say, a textbook, presenting the question and the current legal framework and the needed evolutions we observe. The group share the document with the whole class, and it is studied like readings, as you use in the US. And the second step is based on creativity, because during each class, a group of students has to imagine the good way to make the rest of the class contribute without using technical tools. And the idea here is first to identify if all students have well studied, of course, and understood the readings, and to put this knowledge into debate. And to create this interactive format, they can use AI solution. The only instruction I give to them is sky is the limit. Be creative and surprise me. And other results, for the last 3 years, my law students are creating board and card games, escape games, at the last year. So, for instance, to discuss the EU deepfake legal framework, for example, my students have this year created an escape game to find who has stolen the jewelry from the Louvre Museum. Maybe you've probably heard about these epic burglaries that shocked France all around the world also a few months ago. And this game was based on synthetic contents produced by the students themselves using a lot of AI systems. Then the class played this game, addressing step by step the various legal questions about deepfake to face, for example, the protection of privacy, data, personal data, dignity, IP rights, and even integrity of scrutiny due to the sharing of massive amount of deepfakes. And with such a method, the students first deploy better use of various AI solutions, better understand also the legal challenges, also deploy critical thinking, deploy better human relationship by playing games together, and increase their creativity skills that help them to discuss. It is very important for us in the legal field, the evolution of the legal framework. And at last, I have to confess that I have seen how much they have been more involved in the learning process by playing games and creating games and having a lot of fun, and me too. And secondly, in my classes, I also inviting AI legal solution providers to demo their tools and discuss the results with students. So the first goal is for the students to be trained to use such a solution, because now the law firms expect this training. And the second goal is to challenge student-specific human skills and that produce very good results. So at the beginning, students are very excited to use these new tools because it's very expensive, so they don't have access to this kind of tools. And they're also very frightened about being replaced by the machine if the machine is better than them by resolving legal use cases. And I asked them to work in small group, and at first they have to find a way to produce the best prompts to resolve the legal use case. And after, they have to take into account, of course, ethical concerns, even environmental aspects by prompting, so not having a lot of prompts to have the best prompt in a short time. And then they have to challenge the results and think about a better solution using only their own legal knowledge. And so what is the output? What is the consequence, the result of this exercise? Students observe how AI is working, of course, how effective it is, and what are the limits of such solutions. And I have to observe in the French perspective, I don't know the US one, that at the very moment the AI tools are not so efficient, the students are better. So the students here, they feel more confident at the end of the class, more confident in themselves, and they decide, at least for now, to use AI for very little specific purposes. So it's great.
That's really enlightening. And so you're focusing on some of the creative skills of students. I want to turn to Hod Lipson, and perhaps before asking you about critical thinking, let me just introduce you very briefly. Hod Lipson is the chair of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Columbia University, an award-winning researcher, teacher, and communicator. Hod Lipson enjoys sharing the beauty of robotics through his books, essays, public lectures, and radio and television appearances. His TED Talk on self-aware machines, I recommend it, is one of the most viewed presentations on AI and robotics. So, Hod, welcome, and maybe just to put you on the hot seat, is AI capable of critical thinking? In other words, one of the key features, and we've heard about this morning. I mean, over and over, we've kept discussing the value of critical thinking as one of the distinct contributions of universities, and an area that is more or less inaccessible to AI. Is critical thinking and other sort of soft skills, are those the kinds of skills and capabilities that are properly human, and should universities make big bets on those specifically because of that reason?
From the way you asked the question, I think you're not going to like my answer. Okay, because you kind of try to answer it in your question, but the answer is no. Yeah, AI is very good at critical thinking. I would say I get better results from AI when I try to look at pros and cons, or to give me different views. It's basically how you ask the question. You can get different answers, and if you're looking for pros and cons, you're looking for multiple views on the question, you will get that. But you have to tell the AI that's what you want. So you sort of like many things with AI and computers in general, you have to ask the right questions. It's a little bit of what we just heard, understanding how to phrase the question, and if you want critical thinking, you will get it. But you have to understand how to interrogate the AI, how to use it. One of the things that I just heard your answers about what you teach students. One of the things I talk to students and try to do myself is you never work with one AI. You always work with multiple AIs. You pitch them against each other. You can tell ChatGPT that Gemini said something else and see how they argue between themselves. It's amazing to see the politics between the AIs. ChatGPT will tell you, well, Gemini is not that good, but so understanding how we really have to co-evolve with these AIs. And I think that it's very dangerous to think that AI, we humans are good at critical thinking and AI isn't, that we're setting ourselves for failure. We have to understand we are up against, and we have an incredible intelligence, and we have to co-evolve with it. We have to learn how to use it. We have to learn how to work with multiple AIs. And I think the soft skills that I find really useful, that I find myself doing more and more, is encouraging people, and I think I hear between the lines of what other people talked about just now, is encouraging students to have the self-confidence to argue with the AI, to ask probing questions, not to take the answer as is, but to have a dialogue, just to encourage people to do more with these tools than they could do before, rather than just think they're superior or that they're inferior, but see it as a coevolution.
Mm-hmm. And are there self-confidence and the confidence to challenge the AIs is something
and to take it seriously, but so it's not stupid.
Right.
We're not superior, but it's also not God. So this idea that you can argue with it, you can challenge, you can pitch AIs against each other, and you can do things that you couldn't do before because you have these tools. These are all empowerment ideas, and most students come in, at least in engineering, which I think is probably the first place where AI is going to wreak havoc, is to tell students, you can do more now because you have these tools, so take up the bar and think big. So you have to sort of empower people, give students the self-confidence to go big and do big things because they have these incredible tools. The idea is not to do what you did yesterday with these tools, but to do things you couldn't do before. And that's a mindset shift that's very hard for students. It's hard for faculty, to be honest, but that's where we need to go.
Thank you. So this turned things around, at least for me, because from what I've been hearing, critical thinking is, the one thing that universities should be focusing on because that will, keep us one step ahead of AI. This is really enlightening. So that shifts also the way that I'm thinking about this. Aymeric, turning to you. So still, in the context of the relationship between universities and the world of work, but trying to analyze the effect of using AI on students' capacities to learn. There's a well-known MIT study that suggests that students who rely too heavily on AI display lower rates of comprehension and retention. We're talking about cognitive atrophy with abusing the use of AI and using AI as a crutch. What's your feeling about this? I mean, how can universities mitigate that risk? What can they do to ensure that graduates who enter the job market are not over-reliant on AI and can still think and operate autonomously?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it's a great question. It's something that we have talked about during the day. I want to start by a small disclaimer. I think there's a question of who has expertise on those topics that are so fast-moving. So as a good friend of mine would say, I'm a PhD. I give expert opinion on things I'm not an expert on. So here my position is I'm a professor of machine learning. I'm doing teaching. I know the tools. I develop the methods. I have worked on those things for now more than 10 years. And I speak from experience in terms of how we use those things in teaching and AI for teaching. I'm not working only on AI for teaching. I just I'm in a position of using those tools, and this is my experience, not my expertise. Right? So I think it's a good starting point to just try to position ourselves with respect to that. So the MIT study, obviously, I have read it. I think it's great in the sense that it sparked the debate, and I think in some sense it echoes what many of us have observed, that obviously if we over-rely on those tools, if I just ask GPT to give me an essay, and I don't put any of myself into that essay, I'm not going to remember anything, I'm not going to be able to explain it, and I'm not going to be able to learn anything from that. So I think it's good that it's starting point from we know the extreme point where people over-rely on the tools is a bad point. Now that doesn't mean those tools do not have tons of benefits. I think that's the real question is how we can really benefit the most from the tools that have existed, far before GPT existed. And AI tools for education have existed for now more than 10 years, and even before GPT. So I think there are two things that we can do, and I think those two things have been mentioned, so in some sense I'm just going to repeat things that have been said before. The first one is explaining to the students how we learn. And I think now we're seeing more and more lectures, we are seeing that in all lectures, and I think many of us as lecturers, we spend time explaining to the students how we learn things. And obviously, I think one key aspect, which is extremely prevalent in mathematics, I'm lucky on that point, is that reasoning is at the center of everything. And whenever I do a lecture, my goal is never that students remember anything. My goal is that students understand things. And if you ever see me giving a lecture or a talk, you're going to see that I like tutorial-based approaches where everything is connected to the previous point. And I think this is something that the students do understand. And when they see that, the understanding helps them be quicker and more precise and much, deeper than whatever they could try to remember from so many outputs from so many models, they understand why there is that price to pay. And that price to pay, we talked about struggling, we talked about friction, all those things go in the same direction. You need time to learn. And in mathematics, again, this is purely understood. Mathematics is the science of building mental representations of abstract objects. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. It's the science of building mental representations. I don't really know what that is. Of abstract objects, I don't really know what abstract objects are, but I can tell you that all the things we talk about mathematics, I do have some kind of mental representation. And the better the representation is, the better we can do. And so I think in that domain, time is the essence. And I think that's something that the students really connect on. So first thing was explaining and messaging that and spending time talking about those AI tools. And the second thing I would say is using the tools in the right fashion. So there is all that space to develop tools that do not give answers, that guide the students, that provide quick feedback, that interrogate the students. And yeah, I think I have seen tools in the expo. I congratulate those who worked on that. I already congratulated them. There are many open source tools. There is Deep Tutor now, which is used and is used worldwide. And all those tools are based on one idea, that any AI tool should not give you the answer. It should guide you through the answer. It should interrogate you. And the rule of thumb, I think, which is good to give to the students, is never ask a question to a model if you don't really have a first answer on your own. And in my field and at master's level in AI, models do make many mistakes. So it's both helpful to confront the model. You can paste the answer into Gemini. So it's something that's also very good to do. But if you can, confront what the model says to what you think, I think it's very good.
Let me turn to you. So you've worked in the private sector for a number of years, and so you're in a kind of bridge between the private sector and the university, and you've dedicated part of your career to building AI systems to access credit risk for financial companies. Such systems are improving at a fast pace and often outperform the humans who have created them. What can AI miss in terms of financial risk management? And what do you teach your students in, for example, your enterprise risk management class in order to fill those gaps? Or are there any gaps for them to fill?
Sure. So I think AI can make the same mistakes that we make as humans. And I think an interesting lens onto that is that AI, as it is now, is more of the same, just a lot more. We could go all the way back to 2012 and hear that software is eating the universe, and we should expect that. We live so much through screens. And to misquote the movie Dune, he who controls the screens controls the universe. We just saw that with OpenClaw. And before 2012 and 2008, we had the financial crisis, sort of what we characterize as a great disappointment in models and modeling derivatives. But if you take a sober look at that moment in history, it wasn't just the models. It was an eruption of human frailty. It was politics trying to make homes available to everybody. It was people buying homes they couldn't afford. It was people hoping models would relegate the risk, send it out, disperse into the universe when it didn't. But that was the past. We could see a failure of modeling. We could look into the future and think into modeling. And also notice in the story that I told, I sort of brushed it under the rug, but we're neglecting a distinction between AI as analytics versus forecasting versus intelligence. Those can be parsed apart in order to add a further lens into what we're talking about. So looking forward, for example, let's think about in terms of intelligence, because that's the juicy part. That's what we're talking about right now in terms of AI, in terms of intelligence. Can AI as intelligence do risk for us? What would that be? Well, even before AI, as humans, we're trying to navigate these frameworks in business and management of like the RACI framework: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Who's going to do it? Who do you blame? Who do you tell about it? And who does it for you? And now, can we have an AI be accountable? Well, not yet. We're not willing to insure them. But that becomes an empirical metric of how much we trust AI. When people are willing to insure the AI to do the task, to assess the risk, then we'll know we have something that is reliable as a metric. But to bring this back more mundane and more concrete, things I say in my risk management class. I say distinguish between maintaining risk, sort of maintenance, and vigilance, where vigilance is imagining what's new. And right now, we can't rely on the AI to do that. We can't, it's still a human world. Other things that I say in my financial risk management course are that to know the finance, you have to know the math. If you don't know the math, then it's not about the finance, it's about the math. And so that's an encouraging thing for our students and for all of us, because there's still enough humanity left. We have to understand what the AI says to us. And yes, so those are the things that I mentioned in my class.
Great, thank you. So we'll do a quick round. This time maybe quite quick, so we can then open questions to the public. Daniel, I'm interested in issues also of democratization with regards to AI, and the fact, for example, that over 50% of students report that they haven't taken any AI courses during their time at university. Maybe this will change. But do you worry about the risk of an AI divide in the same way as there would have been a digital divide a number of years ago? Will AI democratize the job market by providing the same tools to all, or on the contrary, will it exacerbate inequalities, creating a job market where graduates who can master AI tools are able to race ahead, leaving others behind?
Yeah, I mean, I think as David was saying, right, AI is an incredibly large umbrella, right? We say AI, there's this, I don't know if anyone has read, there's this book by some professors at Princeton. The book is called AI Snake Oil. It's definitely thought-provoking, interesting. Just that I love that opening paragraph. They basically say, imagine we lived in a world where there was no word for car or bike or train. Everything was just a vehicle. Imagine the confusion that would reign. This is kind of where we're at with AI right now. People will say AI to mean a linear regression to predict the default on a loan. People will use AI to talk about ChatGPT. People will use AI to talk about generating art. These are very different applications. So I want to point out that I think in terms of whether people will be left behind, I think it depends. I think if you think back to your digital divide example, someone today who doesn't know how to use a smartphone is definitely left behind. Someone today who doesn't know how to use the latest and greatest, I don't know, I'll use my job, educational tools, let's say, and still uses chalk and a blackboard. Some of my best professors use chalk and a blackboard, right? I'm saying it helps, definitely, but it doesn't. So I think there's real nuance needed there in terms of, I think it's definitely true that some parts of AI, if we can't use them, people will be left behind, but by no means all. In terms of, AI classes and our students and where they come out, I don't know that whether you've taken an AI class is necessarily the best indicator of whether you leave prepared. I mean, by all means, take AI classes, definitely. You should sign up for them. They're great. They're so much fun. You definitely should. But I think much more important these days with AI is just to really develop a certain intellectual nimbleness, for lack of a better word, an ability to just pick something up quickly, an ability to, for me certainly, one thing that's been very tough, I'm not going to lie, is to keep an open mind about the idea that every 2 months I should erase all the knowledge I have, all the heuristics I've built about what tools to use when, and just rebuild it from scratch. So just to give you an example, I keep on coming back to Claude Code because it's so sort of big. I tried it when it first came out. I can't remember when it was. It wasn't really that useful for me. Now it's a huge part of my workflow, and it's very difficult to have to sort of completely reset our expectations about what's going to work when and how. And so as students in college, I would say, that is absolutely probably one of the most important skills to build up, and that ability to just quickly experiment, be on our feet. And that's something you can learn in any class, not just in an AI class. I mean, pretty much any class where you might use AI, you can effectively recalibrate your idea of what's sort of useful and isn't useful at any given time. I think that's probably the biggest skill. I think an AI class can absolutely help you with that, no question. But I don't think it's by any means the only sort of way to develop that kind of skill set, I would say. There's probably much more I can say, but you said brief, so I'm gonna be quiet and maybe touch on those things in answers.
We'll continue the conversation, but I'm hanging on to that point. That's really interesting. Celia, so to pursue maybe on the specific skills that universities are able to endow students with, you're the head of the Observatory on AI at Paris and Panthéon Sorbonne. AI holds the potential to outperform students in many areas. What are the areas that remain, properly human from your point of view and from the point of view of a French, large university that teaches, 40,000, 45,000 students?
Yeah, we observe with the work of the AI Observatory we launched in Paris and other works that we need to propose an evolution of our training program to give students the expected knowledge and skills, and not only the technical ones. And in France, we have observed this since the report of the mission led by Cédric Villani in 2018. And this report has led to the implementation of a specific national policy to build a new training program based on compétences et métiers d'avenir, so let's translate it into English as skills and profession for the future. And France launched a massive investment program, so-called France 2030, so France 2030, to transform key sectors of French economy in a sustainable manner, including AI. And this involves developing a dedicated training program with high employability potential, with emphasis on education innovation. And this is in this context that Paris benefit fundings to deploy our what we call the AI for Sorbonne project, so led by University Paris, with 12 major partners from both the public and private sectors. So our AI Sorb project propose an interdisciplinary approach to create a series of new training programs at the intersections of AI, humanities, and human sciences, including law. And the goal is what Michel Serres called training the tiers instruits. So in English, it could be educated third party maybe. That means persons capable of bridging both fields, technical and humanity ones, to address challenges of the future. So from next September, 4 innovating new programs will be offered by Paris, and they will be adapted to our current humanities training program. So these new training programs are tailored to non-technical students, so from philosophy, the arts, geography, history, and law, and so on. From bachelor to master 2 degree level, and they will offer digital and AI literacy and basic AI technical skills. And all these training programs have been designed to address evolving labor market needs. And to reach this goal, we propose to each professional partners to provide case studies, conference, and internships for the students. And we also plan to have a permanent dialogue with our partner to ensure each training program evolves in the future accordingly to emerging labor market needs. And it's very important, as we have discussed today. And the whole AI project relies on pedagogical innovations such as case-based learning, hackathons, and learning expedition to understand what is happening not only in France, but in Europe and even maybe in the US. And our students will also contribute to, with us, with teachers, to produce podcasts with public radio station Radio France to address the impact, the social impact on AI, for example, deepfakes or recommendation algorithm. And we also plan to produce TV, and we have funding to produce TV programs addressing all these social impacts to train all the students in Paris and maybe give access to this program to the wide audience.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful. Had, let me come back to you again. So, you know, in engineering, of course, you're training engineers. I'm wondering, given the trend and the relative state of ignorance. I mean, I like what you said, Daniel, about, you know, not being necessarily able to predict the future and being modest and humble about this. Does that then mean that the university should also invest in lifelong learning, in the sense that, you know, the job market its evolution is difficult to predict, and therefore, you know, we should, you know, make the university welcoming for people to come back or to continue to learn somehow? I know that Columbia University has launched Columbia Plus recently, or maybe 2-3 years ago already now. Is that the kind of tool that you think would enable us or enable the university to continue to cater to the needs of people in the workplace?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think in general, the way education is moving, you know, again, I slightly disagree with what previously was said here. I think you have to study AI. There's no, if you're a tenured professor close to retirement, you can limp through the finish line without AI. But if you're beginning your career, if you have 50 years of career, students graduating have 50 years ahead of them, there is no way they can survive without AI. It is absolutely necessary, and we have to teach it. But what to teach is challenging because it changes all the time. And so I think absolutely we have to move away from this idea that we're going to teach a student 4 years of core knowledge, send them off, and they're done, to much more of it's a continuous learning. We have to rethink completely what it means to be a university. It's a continuous thing. It should be a lifelong process. Faculty should turn over a lot faster. so that they can keep up with this. I'm close to retirement, so I don't have to worry about it. But but I think we have to really rethink this whole model, and I think it's imperative to keep on moving forward. And I think we talked about this at some point in the past. Universities used to be, I think, and I'm going to be a little controversial, we are entering a period where most of the population will not have a job. And we have to go think about universal income and things like that. And when you think about universal income and people having not to work, which sounds like a great thing, the role of university now shifts away from giving people jobs, preparing people for jobs, to giving people meaning. And this was the original role of universities. Universities didn't originally come up to give people jobs. It was all about study Latin and classics, so you have meaning and you can debate things. We have to go back to that, and that's going to be, I think, the future. And again, I'm not talking about next year, I'm talking about the next 50 years. Universities will shift back to giving people meaning so they have something to do when they don't have to work.
Something to look forward to. Thank you. I like the optimism. I love it. So maybe a French perspective, Aymeric, on, we're just talking to an engineer. You're an engineer as well. How do engineering schools in France adapt really to their teaching, to new AI trends?
Okay, so I agree with everything you've said. We still try to train students to have a job. So I think I think there are many things to say. I think the first part is technical skills. And technical skills, our position is that everyone in engineering schools, people come with a strong mathematical background, and so everyone should have AI literacy. So everyone is knowledgeable, because this, I agree, something they cannot hope to work without for the next 50 years, apart from very, very specific jobs. Then most of our students are going to be experts in AI. So what Celia just mentioned is that in this 2030 program, so the state invested a lot, and the mission they gave us, they created 9 AI institutes in France, one of the leading ones. And in that AI institute, they gave us the mission to double the number of AI experts we output every year. And this is one of the things we do. They gave me the charge of designing the new programs that they're going to create to adapt the teaching we do. And the teaching has to be adapted on core AI. Those are the people that are going to create the AI models. They're going to work for tech companies, and they have to know everything about AI. And this is kind of easy to do because we've always done that. But more importantly, in some sense, or more challengingly, the thing is AI at the interface, AI with sciences. And one thing we are doing right now is that we are creating the first AI lecture. The first AI lecture that all students are going to follow is going to be a lecture with AI and all scientific domains of the school represented. So that's 10 departments involved: physics, chemistry, mechanics, climate, science, social sciences, economy, etc. So 10 departments involved, so that we show both AI and how AI impacts all the scientific fields, because that's where a ton of the impact lies. And many of those problems are completely open. So if you talk about the brain, the climate, all those things are far from being solved by AI, and no AI is able to solve those. So this is technical skills. Then I'm just going to mention human skills, because I think we talked about that, and there's a ton in that. There is obviously creativity, there is communication, there is critical thinking. I think we mentioned those 3. But 2 ones that emerge, and we haven't mentioned that much, are resilience and adaptivity. Because this is exactly what you talked about. Those things change the way we work on a monthly basis or 2-month basis. So we really have to form students to being resilient, whatever that means, and to being able to use new tools in a fast fashion. And this is challenging. We try to partner with institutions that are expert on that for that, and this is actually very difficult. And the last point is actually many things don't change. And for me, one of maybe the thing on which I find the most difficult to decide what we're teaching or not is that we have created maybe 1 year of extra content on AI over the last 10 years, but still all the basics that we were teaching 10 years ago, those things were important, like differential equations, basics of physics, basics of calculus, all those things we cannot really remove just because AI wants a new space. And all those things are the things that haven't changed for the last 50 years. And finding that balance is actually creates many, absolutely fascinating debates on what is the core knowledge that an engineer should have
and how much of it should be AI, how much of it should be adaptivity, how much of it should be what has always been working and the basics of mathematics and engineering. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, we want to create students that can find a job, so they need AI, that can adapt quickly, that can think on their own, and that still masters all the things that existed before. So it's challenging, and lifelong learning is there for that. And I think it's a really great moment to think about all those things.
Thank you. David, last question before we open up to, and the questions have been flowing in, so thank you so much. We've been talking about the importance of teaching AI and taking AI courses for all university students. How do you see this? So is this something that means that all students should be encouraged to study computer science, or should AI be streamlined in a certain fashion in every university course, whether you're studying hard sciences or social sciences? And can you point to examples of how AI has been streamlined in that way, maybe in your own classes, as teaching tools in your classroom?
Sure. So it's an intimidating question of what to advise students. It would be nice if a free market could take care of this for us, if their own ideas, if we could just find collective wisdom. But maybe we can't. We need to opine. We need to try to offer some guidance. I think maybe trying to encourage students to stay at the emergent level and not open the hood. Let AI be the tool that it aspires to be. And so you ask it questions, and then you'll get answers, you'll get data, and then can you validate it? Can you get multiple data sources? Can you be statistical, empirical? All the scientific virtues that do not necessarily have to do with syntax or mathematics, or certainly not computer science. So my bet, and my colleagues who are so accomplished, let me know if you feel otherwise, but I would say stay at the emergent level, stay at this tool, which is ultimately a natural language interface that we are speaking of. Maybe another thing in terms of guiding students is to pick a specific target out there, to love life and love thriving, and pick something that is still a job that is available amidst the threat of our prospective unemployment. But that way, also more humanism, more advice, more vetting, more collaboration. Is this idea, is this target still out there? I think that is the way to go.
Thank you. So I'll start looking at some of the questions coming from the room. Thank you so much. There's a question about China. China has invested heavily in AI education. What lessons can universities elsewhere learn from how China is preparing students for an AI-driven economy? Does anyone want to take that?
I can answer, but not of China. I think there's another country that I know about, which is Emirates, United Emirates. Sorry,
Yeah.
in English. I was looking for it. I think it's interesting to see how fast some other countries evolved. So in Emirates, they basically double the size of the departments every 2 years. It's like plus 50% per year. They create students. They have created the first AI university, and basically, they have tried to have all students be what they call AI native, which basically be completely fluent with the tools, starting working on those tools and with those tools very early on. So one interesting thing that I think is some other countries that don't have any somehow history have far less constraints in designing new programs. I think that's something inspiring for us in France. Changing the curricula is far more challenging than it is in other places, and that's something we have to take into account.
Question.
Just one word of encouragement.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I think that there is, of course, a first mover advantage in this field. The earlier you train people, the better they get, and you get that flywheel. I also want to point out, just as a word of encouragement to people who want to develop AI classes starting today, there is also very much a late mover advantage here, in the sense that this field has had a lot of excitement that then falls apart, and then you realize sort of the kind of stuff that stays and the kind of stuff that goes away. And I think that, for someone designing a new AI class today, in some ways, they also have some advantages compared to someone who was designing an AI curriculum in an AI class a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when it was less clear what the thing was going to be. So I think there's still very much a lot of opportunities there.
Right. Thank you. So lots of questions about, obviously, critical thinking, about the kind of skills that universities are expected to impart to students. One question that is fairly intriguing, in terms of trust, I mean, there was some discussion about trust and building confidence, and there are a couple of questions around this. Let me read one of those. Can we teach students how to build trust with AI and make good judgments when working with it?
Again, working with AI, seeing it as a partner where you have a dialogue rather than just ask a question and take the answer as if it's the thing. So understanding that when you talk to an AI, you think of it as a colleague. Use multiple AIs as a team and co-evolve with it rather than the answer. And by the way, I want to answer a question you had before of jobs. What skills need to be learned? One skill, again, sort of, I think nobody mentioned that. We have this saying in our lab, secret saying, but I'll say it. If your hands are dirty, your job is safe. All right? If you can use your hands to build something, there's no AI that can do it. There's no AI that can replace a plumber, for example. All right? And that's not going to happen anytime soon, I'm telling you as a roboticist. So, but seriously, the trades are coming back, all right? The trades are irreplaceable. Maybe it's going to happen in 20 years from now, but being able to do physical things is really, really important. If all you do is think, then you're really on the chopping board. But if you can build things, do things, change things, poke, talk to people face to face, engage in the physical world, it's much harder for AI to replace it because AI is very good at being virtual.
That, I think, is that things that may appear like they're just thinking, it's actually interesting how much AI is actually revealing. I mean, teaching for me is a big, big part of this. I don't think, I mean, the unsaid thing about teaching is I think there's an assumption for someone who's never taught a class that teaching is about knowledge transfer, which of course it is. A big part of teaching is knowledge transfer. So much of teaching is about emotional connection. It's about, I'm in a room with people, I am feeling.
Exactly.
And there's an element to which, for me, AI has very much made me realize how much of things that I thought were just thinking and just knowledge work are actually a little more sort of complex than that. And I think there's
That's exactly right. So I find myself more and more saying the knowledge you can find on YouTube, on AI, but I can encourage you to believe in yourself and all that soft skills that AI can't do. So that's the getting your hands dirty.
So you're talking about trade. Does arts and crafts sort of enter into that as well?
Yes, arts and crafts, anything that involves your hands and talking to people and poking in the real world.
Great. My favorite question, I'm not biased, why do students still need to come to classroom or attend university? I love the radicality of that question. Who is brave enough to tackle this? In a university. Yes, go ahead, David.
I mean, ultimately they don't, but the university is a ritual for humanity. It's what we do with our youth between 15 and 25. We give them this lens, this middle ground. How else do you have this congealing of these resources of residency, a curriculum, and funding? And then the discipline, the carrot and stick ritual. It's simply what we do. AI won't take that away.
Right, so it's not about the knowledge again, it's about these other things.
Just think back to COVID, people were like begging to be back in the classroom. It's actually funny, I remember in the early days of COVID, I don't know about you, but I was thinking like, that's it. They're gonna realize that Zoom is fine. And then, the step from Zoom to just watching a recording is small, so that's it, we're gone, we're dead. We were not dead. Spoiler alert, it's just, so I think there is that element to it, the sort of magic, the alchemy, which again, to Hod's point, I really sort of agree with what you said. It is to do with the chemistry that happens when you're sitting in a room with a bunch of other people. Having said that, I think AI in some ways will make us more disciplined, right? We really have to justify ourselves in the sense that, whereas it used to be enough to just stand in front of a room and read from a textbook, or now we got to think, okay, well, the AI can do that better. So what is the sort of value add, which I think is very exciting, for me at least, to figure out what that is.
Looking at the other side of the Atlantic, is there, I mean, in terms of what we've been discussing, the relevance of the university and particularly the relevance of face-to-face interactions, I mean, is that something that a large university, for example, like Panthéon, Sorbonne, is really trying to focus on and in order to give these kinds of opportunities to students as well?
Yeah, this is a very important challenge for us because, for example, in the Master 2 degree, we have like 25 students, so it's not so difficult for us to organize this training program I mentioned with not having a very vertical training and be so boring for students and having them on social media instead of listening to you, playing games with them, and I love it. I confess they are all coming, attending to class with great pleasure, and it's much more interesting for all of us, in fact. But when I'm teaching with my first year of bachelor, so in France, I have to tell you that we begin the law studies just after high school. It's different than in the US. So I have students, they have 18 years old. So they discover freedom. They don't need to attend classes. So we introduce for the first time this academic year an introduction to digital law to address the use of ChatGPT, the legal part, and so on. And I have to confess that usually, so there are 400 students in the whole class. It's a lot of students. So they all attend classes. It's not mandatory for them. But because they like discussing what I'm telling, discussing together, sometimes laughing. I hope not laughing at me, but so I try to challenge them. And for the beginning of the class, I ask, okay, we will learn together how to change the settings of your social media. So, okay, just take your smartphone and we play with our social media. So for the first time in France, I tried to do it differently, just to keep them in the class, of course, but also to make them think about their use of the technical tools, including AI. So for the next classes, next Monday, I will address the question of AI companions, because we are dealing with AI companions, such as Friend, the Neckness, ChatGPT, and so on. So we play together in a large audience. It's just challenging, but for the first time, they're not just disturbing, they're not just discussing together without listening to me. We discuss together. And I share with us the difficulty and the necessity and the stimulation of creating laws together, because they have the next generation. So we need to share together something. And just for now, it's working. I don't know in the future, but for now, I'm not an AI teacher, but and they like it.
Yeah. So 3 words.
Yes,
literally
15 seconds.
Literally
Because I see the
15
red light here, and I'm being told that that's all we have time for.
The together. I mean, I think university has existed forever. Neither printing books, nor televisions, nor AI is going to completely replace that space where we are together. We have that emotional connection. In French, it's free. And, and on top of that, we share ideas, we communicate with our peers, and we learn all those skills that go beyond interacting with the machine and thinking on our own. And we are also in contact with research ideas. Try to ask ChatGPT for a good research problem. You are not going to get it yet. You need to be in contact with the border of knowledge. I think that together thing is the thing that defines university and makes it something that's going to last, I think, still a couple of years, I hope.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about and to digest. Thank you. Thank you.